Imagine a wizard so evil that even Voldemort would look like a schoolboy in comparison. No hunger for power, no quest for immortality, no greater good, just pure, unfiltered darkness. A man who lived only to torture, destroy, and create horrors the wizarding world had never seen before. This wizard's name? Ekrizdis, the original master of the island we now know as Azkaban. A place that once lured innocent sailors to their doom, concealed from the world by powerful charms, and crawling with creatures that drain the very soul from your body. Yes, the Dementors. Some say he made them, others believe they existed long before him. But one thing is certain, when the Ministry finally found his fortress, what they saw was so horrific, they refused to speak of it ever again. So who really was Ekrizdis, and did he create the most feared creatures in magical history? Stay tuned, because this story might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about the dark arts. Ask any witch or wizard to name the most dangerous dark wizard in history, and the answers you'll hear will feel predictable. Voldemort, the man who split his soul into 7 pieces, who brought Britain to its knees, who was so feared that people refused to speak his name aloud. Or perhaps Gellert Grindelwald, the brilliant but twisted revolutionary whose charm masks a ruthless ambition. A man who tortured, murdered, and manipulated in the name of a greater good, where wizards ruled and muggles served. These men are legends of fear, their names etched in history as symbols of darkness. But what if I told you there was someone worse, a figure so dangerous, so deeply corrupted, that even Voldemort would seem like a mere schoolyard bully by comparison? A wizard with no ideology, no vision of a new magical order, no hunger for political control or eternal life. He didn't fight for power, he didn't even care about winning. His only goal was to hurt, to destroy, to inflict suffering for suffering's sake. This was Ekrizdis, a name most have never heard, not because he failed to leave a mark on history, but because his legacy was so disturbing that history itself seems to have tried to erase him. We don't know his nationality, we don't know his lineage, we don't even know if he ever left behind followers. What we do know is that he lived during the 15th century, practiced the darkest forms of magic imaginable, and created horrors that even the most battle-hardened auras would not dare face. Ekrizdis wasn't a warlord, he wasn't a ruler, he was a predator, and the dark legacy he left behind, an island drenched in misery, a prison that would one day become infamous, and perhaps even the creation of the Dementors themselves, still poisons the wizarding world centuries after his death. For someone who committed acts so unspeakable, you'd expect volumes of history to be written about him. Yet Ekrizdis remains a ghost in the records, a shadow lurking between the lines of magical history books. We know he lived in the 15th century, we know he was human, at least at first. Beyond that, nothing. No birth records, no family name, not even whispers of where he came from. It's as if he appeared out of nowhere, already corrupted, already obsessed with magic so vile that most witches and wizards would faint at the thought of it. And here's the thing, his magic wasn't just dark, it was alien. The kind of magic that didn't serve ambition or greed, but pure cruelty. When Voldemort created Horcruxes, as twisted as it was still a means to an end, immortality. When Grindelwald waged war, it was to reshape the wizarding world in his image. But Ekrizdis, he didn't want a throne, an army, or a legacy. He wanted victims, and the fewer people who knew about him, the better he could hunt. His secrecy is what makes him so terrifying, because if the little we do know is this horrifying, imagine the things that were erased, hidden, or, worse, never discovered at all. And that's why we're diving deep into this story piece by piece, because what you're about to learn will change the way you see not just Ekrizdis, but Azkaban, the Dementors, and the very nature of evil itself. Oh, and before we go further, let me make you a deal. If by the end of this video you don't think Ekrizdis might be the most evil wizard to ever live, you can, I don't know, send me a howler. But if you do agree, hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss the rest of these dark wizard deep dives. Because trust me, there's a lot more where this came from. Long before it became the most feared prison in the wizarding world, Azkaban was nothing more than a cold, isolated rock in the middle of the North Sea. No fortress, no cells, no ministry patrols, just endless waves crashing against jagged cliffs, and a silence so heavy it felt like the island itself was holding its breath. It was here that Ekrizdis arrived, stumbling upon the island during his travels in the 15th century. But he didn't see a barren wasteland. No, he saw a blank canvas, a perfect stage for the darkest experiments imaginable. The first thing he did was cloak the island in powerful concealment charms, making it impossible to find unless he wanted you to. It was a vanishing fortress, hidden from the world, and for the poor souls who ended up there, hidden from hope itself. Ekrizdis began luring Muggle sailors to his new lair, drawing them in with false lights and deceptive magic. Once they landed, they never left. The island became a chamber of horrors, each room echoing with the screams of the condemned. We don't know the exact nature of his experiments. The records are incomplete, and maybe that's for the best. But what we do know is that Voldemort's Horcrux rituals looked like basic charms compared to what Ekrizdis was doing here. And here's the most disturbing part. The longer he stayed on Azkaban, the more his mind began to unravel. He descended from cruel to completely unhinged. His obsession with dark magic consumed him entirely, and the island seemed to feed on his madness. It became alive with it. Now, here's my warning. The next part of this story is where it gets really disturbing. If you've got the courage, stick around, because what might have been born on the island could change everything we thought we knew about one of the darkest creatures in the wizarding world. And hey, if you're still watching at this point, clearly you like this kind of nightmare fuel. So smash that subscribe button before we dive into the part that gave even Ministry Aurors nightmares. What exactly was Ekrizdis doing on Azkaban all those years? The truth is, no one alive can say for certain, but there's one theory so chilling, so nightmarish, that it's whispered only in the darkest corners of magical history. Ekrizdis may have created the Dementors. Think about it. These are creatures that drain every drop of hope, joy, and warmth from the air around them. Even Muggles, who can't see them, feel their icy grip on the soul. Get too close and every happy memory you've ever had is sucked out of you, leaving nothing but your worst experiences. And if a Dementor feeds long enough, it will consume the very essence of who you are, leaving you an empty shell, soulless and evil. The way they behave, the way they thrive in misery and decay, the way they appeared on Azkaban after Ekrizdis' death, it all lines up. Some historians believe he created them intentionally, crafting them from his own dark magic as guardians of his fortress. Others think they may have been an accidental byproduct of his twisted experiments, born from the perfect storm of cruelty, isolation, and madness that soaked into the island's very walls. And here's the thing. When Ministry investigators first set foot on Azkaban after Ekrizdis was gone, they refused to speak about what they found. Not one report, not one testimony. Silence. Which begs the question, what did they see? What was still lurking there? If this theory is true, then Ekrizdis didn't just leave behind an island of misery. He unleashed one of the foulest creatures in existence onto the wizarding world. And whether he meant to or not, he ensured that Azkaban would forever be a place where happiness goes to die. Oh, and quick warning, the next part is going to show just how deep this nightmare goes, because there's evidence that Dementors might have existed even before Ekrizdis, which changes everything. So if you're still here and loving this descent into the dark side of wizarding history, hit that subscribe button now. Otherwise, you might forget where to find me when the cold starts creeping in. Just when you think the case is closed, that Ekrizdis must have been the architect of this living nightmare, an ancient wizarding tale surfaces, and it threatens to blow the whole theory apart. Hidden within Wonderbook, the Book of Spells is a story so old, so drenched in myth, that no one can say for sure when it took place. It tells of a shy, poor orphan named Ilias, who lived in a small mountain village surrounded by a dark forest. Deep inside that forest stood the black fortress of a wizard named Rexidian, a name that sends shivers down the spines of those who still remember it. Rexidian's castle was guarded by hooded, faceless creatures that sucked the very souls from humans. Sound familiar? These weren't described as Ekrizdis' creations. They were already there, patrolling the forest long before Azkaban was ever cursed. The villagers, who were all witches and wizards, knew better than to venture too close. Instead, they passed down the one spell that could keep the creatures at bay, the Patronus Charm. It was a constant vigil, generation after generation, to ensure the Dementors never swept through their homes. So here's the burning question. If this tale really is as ancient as it seems, then Dementors existed long before Ekrizdis even set foot on Azkaban, which would mean he didn't create them at all. He simply used them, manipulated them, maybe even bred them in the perfect storm of despair his island provided. But there's another problem. We have no proof that Rixidian was real. No dates, no verified accounts. For all we know, the story could be part truth, part legend, or worse, a warning dressed as history. Either way, it leaves us with a mystery. Was Ekrizdis the father of the Dementors, or just the one who made them infamous? And if they did exist before him, who or what created them in the first place? Stick with me, because in the next part, we're going to look at one of the creepiest theories of all, that Dementors don't even need a creator, because they might breed themselves. And before we go there, you might want to subscribe now, because trust me, if you think you can just remember to come back for this, the Dementors would love to prove you wrong. If you thought Dementors needed some ancient dark wizard to bring them into the world, think again. The most unsettling theory out there says they don't need a creator at all, because Dementors breed themselves. And no, it's not like any breeding you've ever heard of. Dementors don't mate, they don't lay eggs, they spread. Like a living, soul-sucking plague, all they need are the right conditions: despair, hopelessness, and a place where misery seeps into the walls. Give them that, and they'll multiply like a fungus feeding on the rot of human emotion. Now think about Azkaban, an island isolated in the freezing North Sea, filled with prisoners stripped of joy, forced to relive their worst memories every single day. It's basically a Dementor breeding farm. The more hopeless the inmates became, the more Dementors thrived. It's a cycle that feeds itself. Misery creates Dementors, and Dementors create misery. Break that cycle? Impossible. Even the Ministry couldn't kill them. They're unkillable. They only grow in number. And here's the real kicker. If that's true, then it doesn't matter who created them. Whether it was Ekrizdis, Rixidian, or some other twisted soul, the moment they existed, the infestation was inevitable. Which means right now, somewhere in the darkest, most miserable corners of the wizarding world, new Dementors could be forming. So here's the deal. If you don't want a Dementor hovering outside your bedroom window next time you're having a bad day, hit that subscribe button right now. Not because it'll actually keep them away, but hey, filling your feed with wizarding history and dark magic theories might just keep your mind busy enough to stop thinking about the cold hand on your shoulder. When Ekrizdis finally died, whether from old age, a spell gone wrong, or perhaps something far darker, the concealment charms cloaking Azkaban fell away. That's when the British Ministry of Magic first set foot on the island, and immediately wished they hadn't. What they found was beyond comprehension. Towering, oppressive walls steeped in centuries of suffering, air so cold it seemed to pierce the soul, and most terrifying of all, the Dementors swarming the fortress like vultures circling a carcass. The investigators who made that first trip, they never spoke of what they saw. Not in public, not in private. Total silence, which is maybe the loudest answer of all. At first, many in the Ministry wanted Azkaban destroyed. They feared the Dementors, feared the dark magic woven into the very stones. But others, the kind of people who see opportunity in horror, had a different idea. Why waste the perfect high-security fortress when it could be used? Their logic was as cold as the island itself. Instead of killing the Dementors, which was impossible, they put them to work. Prisoners would be sent to Azkaban, the Dementors would feed on their misery, and in return, the Dementors would keep the prison escape-proof. No one escapes Azkaban because no one can. And just like that, the wizarding world's most feared fortress became the official dumping ground for witches and wizards the Ministry wanted to disappear. No trials in the traditional sense, no chance for redemption. Just a one-way ticket to a place where your soul would slowly be eaten alive. Now here's the real question. Was this a brilliant use of resources, or one of the darkest, most unethical decisions the Ministry ever made? And if you think you know the answer, drop it in the comments, because in the next part, we're going to dig into why the Ministry might have had more to hide about Azkaban than anyone's willing to admit. And trust me, you'll want to stick around for that. So, you can wait until the Dementors find you, or you can click subscribe now and meet me there. Your choice. The official records say it simply: the Ministry of Magic discovered Azkaban after Ekrizdis' death, found Dementors, and deemed the island too dangerous to destroy. That's it. That's the approved version. But the truth? That's locked away, buried under layers of silence and fear. The handful of witches and wizards who set foot on the island that first time never spoke publicly about what they saw. They didn't write reports. They didn't even tell their families. And according to whispers inside the Aura office, some of them didn't just keep quiet. They couldn't. Something they saw there broke them completely. Rumors claim the Dementors acted strangely that day. Not attacking, not feeding, but circling the Ministry's team as if studying them, deciding which memories to take first. One investigator allegedly began screaming about hearing his own death over and over again, tearing at his own robes until he had to be dragged away. There are also tales of hidden chambers deep within the fortress, rooms Ekrizdis had sealed with magic so twisted that breaking it risked unleashing something worse. Inside were bones, but not like any bones a healer had seen, perfectly preserved yet empty, as if the life inside them had been sucked away and replaced with something cold. Some even whisper that these weren't just his victims, but the first Dementors themselves, humans who had been hollowed out until nothing remained but hunger and despair. The Ministry denies it, of course, but silence has weight, and theirs is heavy. Too heavy. And maybe that's why, instead of destroying Azkaban, they decided to use it, because deep down they knew whatever Ekrizdis had unleashed there was never going away. For centuries, the question has lingered: who truly created the Dementors? The name Ekrizdis dominates the conversation, the 15th century dark wizard whose cruelty went beyond even Voldemort's darkest ambitions. But then there's the old, ancient tale from the Book of Spells, mentioning a different dark wizard, Raxidian, who ruled over Dementors long before Ekrizdis walked the earth. So, what if both stories are true? What if Ekrizdis didn't create Dementors at all, but simply learned how to control and multiply them? Here's the terrifying part. Dementors don't just appear out of thin air. They breed, not in the way living creatures do, but like a living disease. The most supported theory says they grow like a fungus, spreading anywhere despair, misery, and hopelessness fester. And Ekrizdis, he created the perfect breeding ground. Think about it. An isolated fortress in the middle of the North Sea, filled with tortured muggles, endless screams, and the constant shadow of death. If Dementors truly feed on human suffering, then every single one of Ekrizdis's experiments didn't just feed them, it made more of them. Over time, the fortress wouldn't just be inhabited by Dementors, it would produce them. If that's true, it means Azkaban itself is no longer just a prison, it's a factory. Every prisoner sent there is another source of fear and misery, and another potential reason for the Dementors to multiply. Which raises one final, haunting question. If Dementors can breed anywhere, despair thrives, how many other Azkabans might already exist in the world? Hidden, waiting, growing. So, before you sleep tonight, ask yourself this. Is the Ministry really keeping you safe from them? Or are they just making sure you never see where the next one will be born? So here we are, at the edge of the cliff. After everything we've uncovered about Ekrizdis, Raxidian, and the dark, twisted history of Dementors, we're left staring at one question that changes everything. What if Dementors aren't just ancient creatures? What if they can be made? Every scream in Azkaban, every ounce of despair in its walls, every prisoner who's had their soul slowly drained. What if that's not the end for them, but the beginning? Imagine this. Every time a Dementor feeds, it's not just killing its victim, it's planting the seed for another. And if Ekrizdis figured that out centuries ago, what else did he discover? Did he leave instructions? Did he pass that knowledge to someone else? And if so, how do we know they're not using it right now? Here's the scary part. You don't. None of us do. The Ministry says they're contained, but we've seen how they lie. If Dementors can breed wherever despair thrives, Azkaban isn't a prison, it's a factory, and factories can be rebuilt anywhere. So here's what I want you to do. Drop your theory in the comments. Who's the true creator? Ekrizdis, Raxidian, or a name history has scrubbed clean? And while you're at it, hit subscribe, not just so you can watch the next video, but so you're part of the inner circle. The ones who see the truth before the rest of the wizarding world even knows what's coming. Because out there in the dark, knowledge is your Patronus. And here, we're keeping it lit.